Well, I think in the interest of time, we should probably start. So welcome everybody to today's alumni panel titled From Architecture School to Business Owner, How to Model Successful Entrepreneurial Endeavors. And my name is Lynn Burke, and I am the Senior Co-op Coordinator at the School of Architecture at Northeastern University, of course, and I work with both undergraduate and graduate students. And in a few moments, we will hear from 5 ambitious School of Architecture alumni that have started their own businesses. And today, the panelists will share their ideas that led to their successes and hopefully offer any advice to any of the audience members looking to start their own companies in the future. So I am pleased to introduce our moderator for today's program, Riley Smith. Riley is a 4th-year architecture student and AIAS member, and she's currently serving as the Vice President of Studio Culture at Northeastern and will be working at Mass Design Group this January for her 2nd co-op. So I'm really excited for her in her new venture. So just some quick program notes. If you could keep yourself muted, that would help move along the program. And please use the Q&A feature as you see fit. We will leave enough time at the end to have your questions answered. So without further delay, I will turn this over to Riley.
Thank you, Lynn. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the panel. And thank you to all of our panelists for coming out here to share their experience and their stories with us. I'd like to start by just having each panelist introduce themselves a little bit, tell us about their company, what they do, so that we can all get to know them a little bit better. So let's just start with Eric. Just a couple minutes overview maybe to let us all know what you do and what your company is.
Excellent. I'm Eric Army. I lead an architecture firm in Providence called Studio Major Architects. We will be rebranding next month, so I'll send you guys all a link to our new exciting name and profile. We like to say what we do is we turn broken buildings into purposeful places. And that took way too long to come up with that saying, but it's quite accurate and helpful. In reality, a lot of urban rehab, mixed use, adaptive reuse, mostly focusing on downtown Providence, the greater Providence area, a lot in Rhode Island, and then maybe we do work out to New York, New Hampshire as well too. So that's probably maybe 20% is outside of the area that we are. In addition to sort of making cities work better, we do a lot of work with mission-driven schools. So I guess we make the people that live in the cities work better as well too. The big shift that we've been going through is like we basically have taken like the work we've done with mill conversions, downtown city blocks, infill multifamily, and that type of work. And I actually started doing real estate development around the time I started my firm because I don't know, running an architecture firm by yourself seemed like a bad idea from a business perspective. So I figured I'd have another iron in the fire. And so that's actually gone from me running an architecture firm with some hobby multifamily investments to us actually sort of working to shift the firm. So we're transitioning to becoming a multidisciplinary develop, design, and operations group. We've got a lot of cross-functional folks, and we're hiring some specialized people in the development and the property management piece. So that's the vision of the future, as well as sort of, we're actually very good at renovating cities.
That's great. Thank you, Eric. Lindsay.
Hi, guys. My name is Lindsay Duvasar. I am a founder or co-founder of Hydronic Shell Technologies. I kind of had a way, not a typical path into what I'm doing. Hydronic Shell Technologies is actually an integrated HVAC facade panel system, and we're currently waiting to see if we got government funding from the Department of Energy. So that's awesome. So the idea behind that is that, I worked in a lot of engineering firms, and I was a lighting designer, and I was an architect and director of design technology. And I mean, everything you can imagine, because I wanted to be a better architect to understand the entire system. And so I've met some amazing people, and my partner is somebody I met at Bureau Happold Engineering many moons ago. And we decided we couldn't wait for a better solution to make our buildings sustainable and retrofit existing buildings. And so we took it upon ourselves to design and patent a new system. And that is something that we're really passionate about, on transforming cities and taking, rundown neighborhoods and making them more secure and a place where you really want to spend time.
Great. Ryan?
Hi, my name is Ryan Horton, and I am a freelance graphic designer. I started my own little thing back in undergrad. I thought it was really cool to have Horton Iconic Designs. It's something that my whole design ideal, because I want to be something that's iconic. I want to create things that are timeless in a sense. So I then came up to Northeastern to have more of a practical sense of what design is, and understanding what practical architecture is, and actually like being like feet on the ground, actually experiencing what the professional realm is like. And I developed a love for graphics while doing while doing it with studio work. And I was like, well, I'm pretty decent at this. So I started to get a lot of freelance jobs from there. And then once I got my master's degree, I'm like, wow, buildings are very interesting, but they're not my passion. So with that, I completely went freelance and worked alongside, adjacent to a lot of architecture firms. And right now I am the brand ambassador to the Bossanoma chapter. So any outward facing things that you would see is all the things that I've created, just like their new logo and the new website. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Mark?
Yeah, my name is Mark Monroe. I am the Director of Strategy at Neuron. Neuron is a user experience design digital strategy agency based in San Francisco. If you don't know what user experience is, we define it as any interaction a consumer has with a branded product or service. But to put that kind of more simply, we help companies to design, brand, and build digital products and services. So things like mobile apps, web applications, software. I am one of 4 co-owners of the business right now, and the other 3 co-owners are also Northeastern architecture grads as well.
Amazing, thank you. And last but not least, let's hear from Devin.
Hi, I am Devin Wegman. I own an interior design firm in Chicago with my husband. The company is Devin Grace Interiors. I started the company about 4 years ago in 2016. We focus on luxury residential projects, typically kind of private client, single family homes or condos in the city, but we do some commercial work as well, some offices. And today we're a team of 10, so it's grown quite a bit in 4 years. And yeah, just kind of holding on.
Thank you. So I heard from a couple of you. I know Lindsay said that, she couldn't wait any longer for sustainable building solutions and decided to take that into her own business. And Ryan had been freelancing throughout his undergrad and graduate school, and upon graduating took that full time. But I'd love to hear from Eric, Mark and Devin. What made you decide to start your businesses, and where did you kind of have that moment to go into business on your own?
Yeah, I'll field that one. Well, it was 2011, and some of us remember the last Great Recession that we had. Many of us were working part-time and had our salaries cut. So there was not a lot of opportunity cost lost from taking a risk. So I happened to be doing some freelance for somebody that referred a developer to me, and he said, "Hey, do you want to, be the architect for this 100,000 square foot, 3 or 4 building city block?" And I'm like, "I'm not licensed, never done adaptive reuse or worked on a project that big." So the answer is yes. Yes, I want to do that. And I figured I'll work for him until he fires me, because I was the 3rd or 4th architect he'd gone through, and we're still working together 10 years later. It's a sort of thing where I consider my path. I was very, very lucky, very, very fortunate. but I was also very well prepared in the background, and was able to get the licensing set up before I had to stamp it, just barely, and kind of made that happen. That same week, I was also offered a job from Johnson & Wales to be a faculty professor as well too. And I like to say, when you're offered both your dream jobs in the same week, especially if it's the week of your birthday, like it was for me, you say yes to both and you just figure out how to make it happen.
Wow, that's awesome. Anyone else like to share?
Yeah, so previously to starting the company, I had been working at Perkins & Will in corporate interiors, and obviously through co-ops had kind of built up a decent kind of background at a few different sized firms. Working in corporate interiors, I just felt I wasn't really getting the creative freedom that I wanted. I was still kind of young in the industry, so I just kind of saw the path, getting to that point as very long, and I wanted to start designing my own projects and working on my own. So I kind of took the plunge and wasn't necessarily planning on starting a company at the time. I just wanted to do some projects on my own. I think with interiors, it's a little more flexible because you kind of have the opportunity to start with smaller projects. If you wanted to kind of furnish a home or something like that, it's a little less risky, I think, not having a full company set up. So I started out by just kind of taking on some private clients that way after leaving Perkins & Will. And once that kind of grew, I realized this is actually kind of a path that I could take forward and kind of started more of a formal company. So mine was a little more organic in that sense.
I think mine was maybe a little bit of a combination of both. I started to get a little bit frustrated too, sort of in the outlook of where I was working in architectural firms. Wanted to take on more responsibility, kind of get more into design process and going from 0 to 100% on the projects. I had always sort of been interested in the intersection of design and technology. And I kind of got exposed to that actually during my thesis at Northeastern for a master's of architectures. And yeah, I kind of became aware of what user experience was, started to learn more about it. And then got very lucky with an opportunity to learn from someone who had been in the industry for upwards of 20 years. And previously had started his own consultancy, which he had sold. He became my kind of mentor and professor. And then offered the opportunity to start a new consultancy with him, which I jumped at. It was kind of the I don't know, the random occurrence that I couldn't say no to. I quit my job as an architect and just like abandoned the Northeast, which was the only thing I knew, and jumped into it, kind of hit it full speed. And somehow 5 years later, Neuron is still alive and we're doing well.
Great, thank you.
I think that,
I
think that it's funny because I think you're in school realizing that, yeah, I really want my own firm, but then you have this kind of utopian vision of, it's going to be great. We're going to design everything we want to do. And, then you get smacked in the face when you start working full time for an architecture firm and realize very quickly that you're designing bathrooms for like 4 or 5 years. And it's not, I think I got to a point where I've always been like really greedy for knowledge in terms of needing to understand how things work. And I think that most architects are very similar in that respect, the type A personality. But I think that it was a combination of wanting to find a solution and also getting to a point after working in firms, like Mark was saying, that kind of disenchanted with the type of goings on and understanding that, I know I can do this better. And then realizing, well, I have to pay my bills. And so this is going to be hard. And so it's similar to Devin. It's like, you have to be a hustler. You have to be able to, I have 3 jobs right now, right? I'm a founder. I have a full-time director of design technology at a firm. And I'm also simultaneously, consulting on the side because my friends asked me to. but nobody hates money. Let's be real. It's a little bit weird. It's never quite what you think. And I think when the recession happened, people thought this is what an architect does. You know, this is the path. You do this, you design, or you project manage. But it shouldn't be seen like that. Like, it can lead you in every possible direction. You could be the graphic designer. You can go into user experience. You could just stick with the tech side and, geek out all day. Who cares? It's architecture school can prepare you to understand how things work, but you shouldn't limit yourself that way.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback off of that. That was great what you said. I think also what architecture school allows you to do is understand that you're a great problem solver, because we focus on the most of the problems. And you can utilize those skills across any board. You could be a creative, you can be something else or something else. You could do anything that you really want because you have the skills and the mindset and the discipline to really focus on a specific problem that needs to be solved and do iterative processes to make it work in some type of way, multiple different ways. So I think make sure you give yourself that much credit that you deserve, because you guys are going through architecture school and it's very difficult.
And Riley, I can feel that MBA question, if that's helpful,
Yeah,
or I
yeah.
can also respect your jurisdiction.
Yeah, I'll just read it out. So we have a question in the chat from Julia, asking if anyone in this group decided to pursue a degree in business like an MBA in order to establish their companies, and how that fit into their career timelines. I'd maybe like to take this a little broader and just ask, how did your education and background prepare you for the challenges of being a business owner and being in business by yourself or with a partnership, and what things you had to pick up on your own?
I've got two key points on this one. I want to hit the MBA one first. My uncle, who has an MBA, retired at 50 from business. I asked him the same question, and he says, I have an MBA. The only reason I have an MBA was because I wanted to be hired by a boss that wanted to hire an MBA. So he's like, you learn what you need to learn. If you suck at accounting, take accounting classes. If you don't know how to manage, read management books, find a mentor, do those things. He's like, you need all that information. You do not need that degree, though. So find mentor groups would be my greatest advice there. I think and this gets into the second question about how did your education prepare you? If you really like studio, and by studio, I mean getting really vague advice that's high stakes, that you probably didn't do a very good job implementing, and no one will tell you why, you're going to love being in business, because that's literally what you do every single day. But I think in grad school, I learned how to filter. And so whether it was Tim Love or some critic I'd never seen, they'll tell you something and they'll tell you very blunt, and you look at it and you're like, I know where I'm going, and that might be true, but that may or may not help me get there. And being able to filter criticism that's actually not in the direction you're going, but then take massive action on the feedback of people that you trust and people that can see where you're going and are being aligned there. That's the one piece that I started to learn in school. And I think I'm just getting the hang of that this last couple of years, of getting the right people around me, and actually listening and doing the stuff that the right people are telling me.
Yeah, I was always told, my father was in business. He was a salesman for a company called Dun & Bradstreet, which, if you are in business, everyone knows what a DUNS number is. You'll become really acquainted with that very quickly. But he, nailed in me like the art of negotiation since I was 5, all these things. So I never really wanted to go to business school ever. Like, it's zero interest for me. But I understand how the inner workings are. It's the same thing about architecture. It's the solutions, it's the problem solving, like you were saying. It is you never want to be, the one thing he always stuck with me, which I will never admit to him being right, is that you never want to be the smartest person in the room, ever, because you'll never learn anything, no matter what you do. You want to have smarter people with you, and you should never be threatened by it either. You should feed off of them, like Eric was saying, and be able to take what they say and reinterpret it into your own thing if you want to. But siloing yourself off and only working by yourself is a way that you could do it, but think about how much more powerful it is having other people's point of view. it's super valuable.
Yeah, can I just piggyback on that too? I think it's valuable too to not only have other people's point of view, but also focus on what you are an expert in and hire for what you're not. So, you know, starting out, it probably will just be you. For me, it was just me for a year and a half. And then as soon as I realized, like, you know, my plate's full, I need to focus on what I'm good at, which is designing. I need people to come on and handle the business side and, you know, management and HR and finances and all the stuff that I didn't want to handle and deal with. So hire experts that can handle that and do it better than you could, and focus your time on what you do best, because that will ultimately help you grow your business the fastest, and I think the most successfully, because you know, everybody's focusing on their strengths.
Yeah, I would agree. I definitely did not pursue an MBA. I think in hindsight, it would have been nice to have taken some classes and things that I know I still am not great in. Like taking a class in accounting would have been fantastic. But hindsight is hindsight, right? I think I agree with Devin wholeheartedly that you should focus on the things that you're good at. Like you can find a bookkeeper in your early goings or whatever to handle that kind of thing. For me, I have 3 fantastic partners right now that I lean heavily on for a lot of the things that I know I'm not good at. And most of those things include all the aspects around, you know, HR and finance and things like that. So yeah, I mean, the things that we took away from school that I think were extremely valuable, Eric hit on a lot of those, and so did Ryan, I think. Being a good problem solver, it's been extremely important for me, and I would assume others on the panel here, that being able to present your work and your line of thinking in a clear and concise way has been extremely valuable for me. I think that, you know, I do a lot of client-facing presentations on a weekly basis, if not daily. So I use that skill all the time, but it is without a doubt something that you'll be applying to even internal meetings and things like that. So even if it's not outwardly focused, inwardly as well, it's always good. But yeah, the way that you arrive at conclusions, you know, being a strategic thinker, a legitimate problem solver, are skills that apply to things way beyond architecture and user experience, for example.
Yeah, I say, like, in school, find your niche, because I think that people will pick that up when you're around you. Your classmates or your peers will pick that up, because I know for myself, I was great at creating boards and creating like different things and make it very creative and very, very appealing to look at. So I was like, okay, so people started to pick that up, and that's where I got most of my freelance work. I'd never had to like go out to find it. It's found me, which I've been grateful to have that experience, because people have seen what I've done for someone else. And if I've been able to have that strong network through other peers, they're like, oh, I know this guy that can do this and do that. So then I think that's how I've developed my sweet spot in a sense of design. Just being able to understand that you have a strong network now and utilize it, and make sure you solidify your friend groups, because all of you guys are going to evolve into something that's going to be in the professional realm. And then everyone wants to be the best at what they do, and they're going to need somebody that's very good at what they do. So if you're good at something that they're interested in, then you're the person.
Can I just add one more thing, because clearly I'm not talking enough. I think that it's interesting where you're saying, like, how did school prepare you? It's actually, it prepares you in a lot of ways, like we were saying with strategic thinking, but it actually does you a disservice, because it actually doesn't prepare you to work with others well. And it's true, because maybe you have like the junior and senior maybe years, probably a single project or something on your thesis, you'll have a partner, but a single partner. Or I remember our case studies class, which was a cluster of like 13 of us trying to put a case study environment together, and everyone's screaming at each other, and you're just sitting back there saying like, well, great, here's a failing grade. And that's their first attempt of trying to say, like, everybody work together, work nice, and produce, a masterpiece. And we're all staring at each other like, this is cutthroat, man. This is like, how good can I do for myself? But you don't do that. You get into work, and if you go in with that attitude, you're screwed. It's it really does do you a disservice in that way, because it's not about having just one partner. It's about working with, coordination on a job where you have to work with other trades. You have to learn how to work with others well, so that the engineer, my partner in business, is a mechanical engineer, and they think very differently than how we think, very differently. They value different things. And so he's very precise, and, the quintessential engineer mentality of, here's my calculations, here's this. And then he tries to put like a PowerPoint. And the second I say PowerPoint, I cringe, first of all. And I look at it and I'm just like, well, at least he attempted, but also it's a train wreck on my screen right now that I now have to fix. And so what Devin was saying, like, stick to your strong points, and Ryan, you have to count on everybody else. And you have to try to ask people while you're in school what their opinions are, what they think. It doesn't mean you change based off of that. It's don't stay siloed, which is particularly hard given the COVID situation right now. So I totally respect that. But, you have to work with others. You have to figure out how to explain yourself well. And don't just let the mentality and the drive from undergrad and graduate put you in a hole by yourself somewhere.
Can I just add one more thing for if anyone's considering going into interiors? I know this is an architecture program. I went to school for architecture at Northeastern. Obviously, I went on to grad school for interior design. And just in terms of education and what's valuable, I think this is less of an issue in architecture, but a big issue in the interior design industry is there is a very big gray area where, in order to get licensed as an interior designer, you have to go through the same process, not as many exams, there's only 3 exams, but you still do have to go through a process of going to an accredited school, passing your exams, getting your license. However, in interior design, there are state rules where the title laws. So in some states, you can call yourself an interior designer without your license. In others, you can't legally. But like I said, there's a big gray area where nobody really follows that rule. People will just call themselves interior designers if they're changing careers and want to kind of go into that industry. And it makes it really difficult for, I guess, responsible interior designers to have actually gone to school and kind of practice all the steps to get to that point. But I think one thing that helps is, having a really solid foundation of just a good education program. You learn so much in that program. When I went to grad school, I went to Suffolk for interior design, and you learn about the different types of fabrics, the different types of paint finish levels, like things that just details that are so important. And if you are going to start your own business, people are hiring you because you're an expert in this. And if you don't have that educational foundation, you're really kind of cheating your clients. And I think like I said, in architecture, I'm sure that's less of an issue, obviously, but if you are considering going down the path of interior design, take education seriously and follow through with it, because it is what sets you apart from, I don't want to say fraudulent, but like from people who don't follow those steps and still market themselves as designers. And I think it does eventually kind of play out and does set you apart. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Devin. And I'd also like to bring back some of what Ryan was talking about how he kind of networked and built up clients through his expertise and the way he was showing his skills in architecture school. How all of you, I guess, built up your customer bases, how you marketed your firms, and maybe how that's changed from when you were starting out in your career towards where you are now, especially for people who've been in business for a longer period of time, the ways in which you attract clients.
I guess I could continue on that for just a little bit. I know also putting myself in a situation to be a part of organizations are huge. I think starting with Boss Noma, being a part of Boss Noma was something that was like, okay, I'm a minority in architecture, I should be a part of this to see what it's about. And then really getting ingrained with it and trying to be like, what can I do to help this organization? Because it's helping other people that are like me. So from there, then being able to have the opportunity to then rebrand everything for them, and then seeing partner organizations like Youth Build Boston, I was able to do their new website design. I'm like, this is really cool. It opens the floodgates of many different opportunities because I'm able to like help one organization that's helping other people like me. That's going to continue to have like a domino effect to everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think building the customer base is still an ongoing experiment for us. You know, I think we've thrown everything at it that you possibly can. I would encourage people that are still in school that are considering all this to continue to build connections, get out of your comfort zone, go meet people. As Brian was saying, go join, you know, become part of other communities and networks. Really try to build out your Rolodex, for lack of a better word. It'll go a long way. The more meaningful the connections, the better. I think things that we've started to do more of, marketing sort of becomes more second nature as you get more comfortable in the role, build more confidence in how you present yourself to people publicly, without being able to, you know, give your elevator pitch. You know, you'll hear people say things like win without pitching. It's something that takes a long time to learn how to do right. And I definitely don't want to pretend like I know how to do it right yet. So, I mean, just do everything you can, I guess, for lack of that's not really an answer. We're in the service industry. It's a little bit different than trying to sell a product, but yeah, I think we've just kind of honestly tried everything. Like we started out long ago when we were down to our last few bucks, we sent out like 2,000 physical mailers that we hand signed. Not a single person responded to them. So when I say we've thrown everything at it, I mean it. I think at this point we've just managed to do extremely good work and have found ourselves on kind of top rated lists and things like that as experienced design consultancies. And yeah, we kind of keep getting referred by our clients to new clients and keep getting ongoing work by doing good work in the first place.
Yeah, I agree with what Mark's saying there. It's like the relationships that you build are your key driver of these things. Doing good work, really honoring the referrals that you get. On kind of the pitch without pitching piece, learn how to tell a good story. And by that, I don't mean a long story. I mean a short, concise story, like saying, hey, the reason why we do what we do is because we want to see cities become vibrant places that are people first, place-based, and purpose-driven. And then you stop talking, and then someone asks you a question, because one of those 5 things you said probably was interesting to most of you in the room, I assume. And then that just sort of gets the conversation going. And then you're the one that's responding to people's interests rather than being like, oh, and we did this, and we did this, and we did this. No one wants to hear that. But if you can pique their interest, if you know how to tell a story, when you've got a good hook to a conversation, you read whoever you're talking to and making sure it's like, oh, they're interested in these things. Like, you know, I know how to talk about those in a way that is meaningful to the other person, puts them in the position of the hero of the story. You're the guy that's going to help them get to where they're going. That mindset shift. It works with managing your team too. I do that all the time for them. And I don't know if they've noticed that yet, but it's much more effective when I do. So
I think that it's interesting what you're saying about the being able to tell a story. We just focusing on both the verbal and the visual storytelling is really important in a really concise manner, but also understanding who your audience is, right? Who's your target? You're not going to have the same pitch for one than you would for another. And that doesn't just mean like the physical assets that you're producing. But if I, you know, in our company, we just got off the phone with the Rocky Mountain Institute, who are great, and we're going to mention the holistic point of view. But then if we're talking to Elon Musk people, you know, from Stanford, who really just want to know about the science behind it, and I'm just going to sit back and shut up while my partner goes on, because it's one of those things where you have to understand what they want the most out of it. So do your research about who you're meeting with. Do your research about what you want to sell, because you're going to take jobs you're not too keen on at first. All of us do it. It's one of those things where you're like, I guess I'll do this for half of my fee because I can put food on my table, and also it gets my name out there, kind of thing. Definitely know your audience.
I think another important thing to keep in mind is to figure out first what kind of clients you want to attract, and then go where they are, right? So You guys were all kind of saying that, but for residential, it's a little different. We do the majority of our marketing on Instagram. People are on there, you know, looking for pretty pictures. So we post photos of our work. I would say 50% of our clients come from Instagram, and the other 50, like you guys kind of said, are from referrals. So you do a good job with one client, they spread your name to, you know, all of their friends who come over to their home and see the space, and it kind of takes off from there. So I think, yeah, the most important thing is figuring out who your ideal client is, where are they, how can you, you know, get their attention, and then, yeah, just kind of be subtle in in selling. So.
Thanks, Devin. Thank you, everyone. I've got another question in the chat, which I'm super interested to hear your answers to. How did you go about getting money to start your businesses? And was it something that evolved over time as you acquired more jobs? Did you apply for business loans? You know, how did you get that funding and kind of get started and stay afloat?
I think the beauty of interior design and architecture is it is a service-based industry, both of them. So for us, we never did take any funding or any business loans. It was all organic. So, you know, you sell your services, you make money off of that, you can grow from there. Once you're kind of drowning, that's when you start hiring for help and, you know, growing in that sense. But yeah, I think that's kind of the beauty of this industry is because it is service, you know, as long as you have a laptop and your basic tools to get started, you don't necessarily need an office in the beginning. You know, I worked from my dining table where I am now because of COVID for the first year and a half. And it wasn't until we started hiring employees that we actually moved into an office. So there's really very little overhead in the beginning, fortunately. And as long as you're making enough to pay your bills, you can just kind of bill as you go.
I think I'm a little different. Well, sort of. I mean, there's the consultancy side of what I do because I specialize in the technology behind what we do in architecture and interiors and everything else. And also understanding how BIM has impacted the industry and how the data is, you know, followed all the way through construction. And our company, you know, is providing a product, which is different than that. And so we've applied for, you know, government funding. We've literally cold called every publication on sustainability you can imagine, which has not been easy during this administration because a lot of them don't exist anymore. But I think some of it is depending on what you have to be really careful. You know, we're lucky enough, my partner's mom and dad are both lawyers. So we get good legal advice and you have to be careful and protect yourself with that and open an LLC so that your own personal assets are not impacted by what you're doing. But also, you know, who do you want to partner with and what are you going to get from that? Like we've sold equity in our company to some of our partners versus just paying like a consultant fee for their feedback. And so the funding behind that can come from your other partners deciding on like who you want to work with. But yeah, you apply for business loans if you want it. There's a ton of, I think a lot of people don't understand because who wants to sit down and read the law on a frequent basis? There's a lot of funding for small businesses and minority owned businesses and stuff like that. Some of it, no strings attached, others, lots of strings attached. So just read the fine print a lot and very carefully. But, you know, that I think the one, it goes back to like the MBA question, right? Or like the art of financing as, you know, how do I manage my bank accounts and my credit and this, that like a lot of people are you know, lack that lesson in life. Unless you got that, you know, the talk from your parents before you went to college and then everybody goes out and buys booze and everything else with it anyways. But you sit down and you have to figure out, I open a bank account and I don't touch it. You know, here's the profits that come in from one job after another, and we can use it for this and run your budget. Like don't overextend yourself and don't get, you know, the credit of your business in trouble either. So educate yourself. I think Eric was the one that was saying on the different communities out there and the different, you know, tools that are available for you to learn. I mean, most of us, I'll date myself here, but we didn't really have there was no Instagram. There was like minimal Facebook when I was in school. I'm really aging myself here. There, wasn't a huge following for YouTube other than watching like people do stupid stuff. So it wasn't like free learning, lynda.com learning, stuff like that wasn't a huge asset for us as it is now. So you use those tools, and there's tons of free tools. Free is your friend. Don't get funding and get a credit card for your company if you don't need to. You have to be really smart about it.
Most of what I would say would be covered if you're running a service business. I'll just talk for 1 second. I actually am a real estate developer. We've got multiple deals that are, in the $1 million overall deal range. So we've actually had to develop relationships with commercial lenders. We have a deal where we lost our term sheet, which is basically just the bank's proposal back to you after 2 months, and it's only supposed to be a 3-month sort of closing. So we had to, talk with 9 different lenders to find the one that would write a term sheet for the type of product that we're putting out, during COVID and those sort of things. So on the development side, I think the question was like, how did you initially capitalize it? If you go from a solo architect that's, I do know what you guys make because a bunch of people your age work for me. So it's like, if you go from, making 20 something bucks an hour to billing out at 75 an hour because all of a sudden you're on the other side of the table, you can make some wise decisions there, and you can make some kind of dumb decisions there. You're either going to use that money to invest in people, meaning getting the accounting person, getting the management person, etc. I thought I was pretty smart. I'm realizing now I wasn't nearly as smart as I thought I was. But I saved that up and I bought my first 2-family. Basically, actually, the first thing is I paid off all my student loan debt, and then I bought my first 2-family because I realized I'm in a very risky position starting a business in a recession as an architect. So me and my wife's first goal was to reduce our risk level, which was eliminating sort of any debt we didn't have to take. Then after that, slowly started getting into the real estate piece. And as equity grew in projects, being able to refinance those, pull money out that it's kind of fake money. It's sort of market money, pulling it out wisely, making sure that you've got sort of good numbers for whatever industry that you're in, and using it to slowly build piece by piece. And now I'm actually spending more time, effort, and money investing in the people in my team than I am trying to do that other piece. So I don't know if I was smart in the beginning or if I'm just learning it now. But if you're in business, you will have times where chunks of money will come in that you just can't fathom at this point. What you do with that will make a huge difference. And so either invest in assets that appreciate or invest in people that will bring you to another level. One of those 2 choices will probably be the right one.
Thank you. We got a few more questions in the chat. Enya was wondering if there were points in your career when you struggled to maintain work or doubted your ability to keep running your business, and how you overcame that.
Sure, of course.
All of us.
Yeah, it sort of goes to the financing thing. We started a business with an at-risk loan from a partner. We got down to the last week of runway and managed to get a client, and have continued to get clients since. But we were like right at the fringe of being like, well, we tried, time to go get a job now. I don't know what that job's going to be, but oops. I think part of the reason why we did survive is that I think I said before, I took a big risk. Like I quit my job in Boston. I was the co-chairman of the housing. I can't remember the housing committee. Sorry, the BSA. Like I had a bunch of connections, but I was just jumped in it, with both feet. Took on huge risk. I didn't pay myself for 4 months. Even when we got that first client, I still wasn't getting paid. So I was accumulating debt, which I'm sure a lot of people would be like, you're a fool. But I didn't care, it was like, I'm either going to sink or swim with this. Luckily I swam after a little bit of sinking, but no, I think, yeah, there's definitely times where you doubt yourself. I think it's been great to have business partners this whole time for me personally, you know, like to lean on them to get the encouragement or whatever to continue to press on and whatever, to have each other's backs all the time. I don't know how successful I would have been if I was by myself, that's for sure. I probably would not have been successful actually having jumped into an industry that I didn't have any like prior project experience in, quite honestly. But yeah, there's definitely times where you doubt yourself, but I think also remind yourself as to why you started in the first place when you have those moments. You know, if you have a mentor, go talk to your mentors. Just kind of check yourself, you know, like, do you want to go back to where you were before? Keep pushing on to what you're trying to pursue in the first place. Yeah.
I guess something for me is utilizing my support group in the sense of like, if I feel like I've never really had the opportunity to really work with other creatives the way that I work. And it's now that I have a job that allows me to continue to do my freelance stuff as like a side gig, but then also making side gigs out of my side gigs. So I know at one point I was like, if I'm able to make really cool graphics, why not put that on a t-shirt and then sell t-shirts? Because that's also a thing of a way of income. So I did that while also allowing myself to try to figure out what I'm going to do for the next thing, or if I'm going to focus on this client's work, or maybe focusing on guerrilla marketing in this. So I think that, and also I love to lean on Boss Number because they've really allowed me to really blossom as a designer, because they've allowed me to have free reign of what I want to do, and being able to do design and things that you love and really passionate about allows you to really get out of those funks that you have, because you know that people around you are looking to you and they know that you're very good at what you do and they appreciate what you bring to the table.
It's definitely not for the faint of heart. Let's put it that way. There are times where you just get so deep down, you're like, can I pay my rent this month? Or, oh yeah, that insurance thing that we're required to have. Or, you know, it's a lot to take on, but like Mark was saying, like, you have to be all in. You can't half-ass it, because you won't, I mean, unless you're the luckiest individual in the world, you won't be able to be as successful as you could be. And it's also really important, like you know, Ryan was saying, it's a hustle. Side gigs on side gigs on side gigs. And you're like, yeah, I'll do this if it'll get me this. And like, don't keep your mind on what your main goal is, but don't be afraid if it pivots from that either, because you may find out from a side gig on the side gig that this is awesome. Maybe I'll do it this way, or maybe I want to do everything and I don't want to be limited. Just be really good at doing everything. Don't half-ass any of it. But it takes a toll on you every day because you don't have a safety net anymore. There's no one that, like, a salary coming in. I mean, you could work like me and just have no sleep, and then you have a full-time salary because I support family and everything else on top of all this other stuff, you know, which eventually will go away. But it's not, there's no more safety net. You became an adult overnight. Even if you're married, even if you have kids right now, you know, like, that's not adulthood until you all of a sudden have no one that can help you but yourself. It's scary. It is, but it's also something amazing and beautiful because you have to really want it and believe in it to do it.
Yeah, and I just want to underline what Lindsay's saying there. Running a business is the hardest thing I have ever heard of, you know, and encountered. And, you know, I think the question was, are there ever days you think you're not going to make it? I'm like, well, there are some days that I think I will make it. And I'm 10 years in with a staff of 10, you know, and it's one of the pieces that I think was really key about this. A few years back, I joined a group called C12, which is actually, it's a business coaching group, but it's also faith-based, because the thing about business is there's a physical side, like, are you good at running a business? There's a relational side, like, how good are you with people? And there's also, I'd call it a spiritual side, like, what's your why? What's your meaning and purpose? And like running a business, you get pulled back to your why so often. If you don't have a strong why, you're not going to get through that. And it's going to reveal any relational problems you have, you know, with your team, with your spouse, with your parents. Like, it's just all in your face every day. And then, like, the piece we've been talking about most of the time, like, how do you run a business? All that sort of stuff. Like, that's just one layer, you know. So anyone in the room that's run a business, like, you could talk about like your struggle with your why for a whole hour, or how this has put you relationally for a whole hour. In this, we're just kind of scratching the surface. Like, yeah, there's some real practical things about business, but to me, that's like, it's like an upside down pyramid. Like the why and the relationships, I spend most of my mental energy in, and then the practical stuff tends to work itself out if you get those two other pieces in place.
Thank you. We've got a couple more questions and just a few minutes left, so I want to be conscious of all of your time. The first one is how you manage the financing in terms of the client side. Do clients pay per project phase? Do they pay at the end when it's finished? Do you bill monthly based on hours? And then the second question is, as a business owner, how do you manage your time between producing work and like administrating your business? So maybe if each of you could just touch on those two questions briefly.
I can jump in on that. So for the financial question, I think every business kind of operates differently, and that's something you kind of set up when you're forming your business. You know, how are you going to bill? What's your fee structure going to be? Obviously, I think that evolves too very quickly over time. As you grow, as you gain overhead, you need to start billing more to compensate for that. So the way that we bill personally is we collect a 30% retainer, you know, of the estimated fees up front just to protect ourselves. And then from there, we bill hourly each month. So, and then in interiors, there is a second kind of portion to the business where we're also procuring all the materials and goods for a project. So, you know, all of the furniture, all of the tile, plumbing fixtures, light fixtures, everything, we're procuring those for our clients. And with that, we mark up as well. So again, interior design, everyone operates very differently. Some firms mark up different amounts. Some firms kind of hide the markup. We're very transparent with our clients and tell them exactly what the markup is and what it's covering. You also kind of with that get access to, you know, you set up relationships with vendors, you get wholesale pricing, so you get steep discounts. That's kind of like going on a side tangent, but yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to kind of operate in the interiors business that way. And then the other question about how you manage your time focusing on the business versus focusing on client or billable time, was that generally the question? I think that is something, again, that kind of evolves with time. For me personally, you know, in the beginning, I was spending as much time as possible. It was usually 80 hours a week working on billable time, just building these projects and relationships. And then as that, you know, as things kind of progress, then you have to shift and start hiring people that you can then bill out their time so that you can focus on the bigger picture. And basically the way that we operate is anytime my time starts to get sucked and taken more towards the project billable side, that's when it's time to hire and shift my time back to managing the business again. So that's kind of how we operate. It's again kind of an organic process, but that's kind of the lever, I guess. So it shifts a lot.
What you go ahead, Mark.
No, I was going to say we primarily have two different types of engagements. One is retainer based and one is project based. So projects is a similar thing to what Devin was saying, where it's usually basically a deposit or a percentage of total project budget or project fee at the start, and then it's either phased out at phases of the project or at just time increments or whatever. The retainer based is simply basically a purchase of hours at the start of every month. So if someone's buying, you know, someone full time for a month or the equivalent of a full time person for a month, and that's usually paid up front, and then you work down the hours and start again next month, kind of thing. So the financing thing, I think for us is sort of straightforward. I think it's just based on the engagement type, and how you manage doing the work versus everything else. I think you're almost always doing the management stuff, the strategy and everything. At least I feel like I'm always like, it's extremely hard for me to turn my brain off from that stuff. You know, like I long ago I worked in a restaurant. I used to have like dreams of like burning food. Now I have dreams of like, you know, a project disappearing or like, you know, people quitting or shit like that. So I'm always turned on to what, things with regards to the business and whatever. I would agree that early on, you're kind of always trying to maximize your output of doing the actual work. As you start to bring people on, of course, you're switching to the management side of things. I still do quite a bit of work, like output work, actual pushing of pixels or drawing, as you might call it in architecture still. But yeah, it's definitely shifting more towards business development, managing of people, growing the team, marketing, of course, because that allows you to continue to grow.
I think that similarly to Mark, it really depends on the client for billing, because you may have retainer, you may have hourly, you may also get into a point where if you're trying to win work and a repeat customer, you may let some of it float and then bill them on the back end if you get more work, and that's a discussion, or the handshake contract, as they say, with the client, which be careful with those. Handshakes are not honored all the time. Get it in writing. But in terms of, you become a really, you have to be a really good multitasker. And I don't know about you, but I have like a wall full of color-coded Post-it notes right now. And I just keep adding, and occasionally I pull one off because I think, I do it. But you get to a point where as a founder, you have to be the big picture person, and you can't do the stuff that maybe you enjoy all the time. I wish I could get into, and just start drawing and sketching and doing all this stuff on a daily basis. It's like my Zen state, right? I haven't been Zen in a while because I have to worry about all the other stuff. Like, is this person, okay? And culturally in your company, like, we want to make sure people are enjoying working with us and enjoying these things. And you have to keep an eye on that stuff. You can't just be about the business and about the work, even though that's really important. You have to think about the holistic point of view from everybody on the outside too. And, be that type A person you were that made you go into architecture, be that person, maybe don't in front of everybody evoke that, because a little much for some other people outside the business. But yeah, go into it and just organize yourself. Lists, lots of lists.
I guess I can go. Real quick, I guess, shucks, I kind of forgot the question, but I'm still here. I think, what was the question? I'm sorry, I forgot the question. I'm not gonna lie to you.
There was kind of two questions. One is how you manage the kind of client side of the financing in terms of how your fee structure works, and then the second was how you feel like you balance your time between producing kind of output work and managing the business administration.
Okay, I'll go with the producing one first. What I like to do is, if I have multiple clients, I like to make sure that I produce work for them to be critiquing. And once I'm in that phase, then that's when I could like think about or iterate or try to like create an idea for the next one in between that reviews period between clients, because I think that's the best time to really do it. Because otherwise you won't have time to really have space to design for any of them. It's a lot of scheduling and focusing on what's important, and being true to your deadlines, because you're the one, you're like, yes, you're your own boss, and yes, it's very flexible, but you have to be true to your deadlines because you're accountable for all your things you're producing. The next one for finances, is that correct? I'm sorry, there's a lot. What was the first question again? I'm so sorry.
It was just wondering how you manage the financing, how clients pay you. Like, do they pay you up front? Do they pay at the end or throughout the project?
For financing on my end, I hate counting hours because I think that just throws me off of my creative mojo. So I like to make sure we have a contract in place. First and foremost, always have a contract in place, have it in writing, because it's very important, because people like to just talk and like, oh yeah, you can do this for me, and want you to do it cheap because you're their friend. That's not the case at all. Your time is very valuable. I usually have it cut first payment, initial payment, and then final payment. And if it's like a long-term thing, will be like progress payments in the middle. Yeah, always have a contract, always.
Thank you.
Can I just add one thing to that real quick? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
The lesson learned, and everybody does it. Architects are awful at business, by the way. So you have to work really hard at it because it's not something we're trained at. But it's one of those things, like, you know, Ryan was saying, have a contract. You also have to learn to stick to the deliverables in that contract. You're going to want to do 10 times more because your body is just like, yes, I'm in it, I'm going for it, but you're not getting paid for it. So you have to find a happy medium and understand that you need to learn how to stick to that deliverable list, because you'll kick yourself in the ass when you realize, like, oh, I just worked an extra 20 hours that I'm never going to see any money for. Be careful with that.
Thank you. Yeah, we're running up to the end of our time, so I'd just like to wrap it up and say thank you to all of you for coming here and sharing this incredible wealth of experience you have, and teaching us all about the businesses you've created. Any final words from you, Lynn?
Just to echo that, I'm incredibly inspired and always love to hear about your successes as you move along in your career. And I'm privileged to know you. And I remember all of you, well, except for Ryan, as freshmen in my architecture, class, where we sort of started laying the foundation for all of this. So I'm always incredibly inspired to follow you and hear about your successes. And I'm hoping some audience members were inspired today, and I'm hoping all of you would be willing to share your contact information for anybody that had some further questions or looking for some advice on getting started on their own entrepreneurial endeavors. So thank you again for tuning in, and hopefully we can share this video for anyone that missed it today. And stay well.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Yeah, thank
Good
you.
to see you guys.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.